All right. Again, my name is James. I am a video production specialist here at Videoguys. If you have any questions at all, make sure that you give us a call, 800-323-2325. And there's a good chance that you'll actually talk to me. My direct extension is 1111. If you do have any more technical questions, I would be more than happy to answer them for you. Like I said, today we are doing kind of an Ask the Video Guys and kind of not, just talking about updates and upgrades for a studio. So to start off the bat, if you have any questions like this, there are several different ways that you can get a hold of us to get those questions answered and potentially even be on a show like today. So the easiest way to get a hold of us is to either give us a call at 800-323-2325, or you can send us an email at sales@videoguys.com. We check those every single day. You can comment on the YouTube video or the Facebook video where you're watching now, doesn't matter which one. And then you can also tweet at us or X at us, I don't know what it is anymore, at Videoguys, and we will respond to any and all questions that you have. Hey, maybe you even just want to share that you are using, I don't know, for example, YoloBox Ultra in an interesting way, and you just want to talk about it. We'd be ecstatic to hear about that. So we're going to start off with the question that we got asked the other day, which is, when is the right time to update your production hardware? And when we got that question, we said, well, do you mean get a new device or update the software? And so we decided that we're just going to talk about all of the above. So we're going to start out with updating and tell you our schedule for when we update the firmware or software on any of our devices. So here is the calendar schedule with our list of when we update our devices. So on the left-hand side, you can see that once per month, we update anything in our studio that is going to be sending a stream to a destination, whether it's Facebook or YouTube or Twitch. So items like our TriCaster, because we stream off of a TriCaster TC1 Pro. But we also use YoloBoxes in our studio, and we have several computers that are in our studio. And any or all of these can send a signal to YouTube or Facebook. So we make sure to update these every month. And typically for us, we will wait until the last Thursday of every month. And you may say, well, why do you wait until the last Thursday? Well, Videoguys viewers know that we stream on Tuesdays. We also do a secondary show on Thursdays. And so we don't want to be updating our systems on Monday or Wednesday because that's the day before a show day. And we don't want to really recommend updating on a Friday either, because if we were to need some technical support from the manufacturer, well, now we don't have anything going on. We don't have a way to access them over the weekend because most tech supports are only available Monday through Friday. So typically for us, we will start an update after our Thursday shows, and then that gives us all day Friday to troubleshoot. And then even if we can't get it updated by the end of the day on Friday, we still have all day Monday and most of the day on Tuesday before we have to have a plan B or get plan A up and running again. So that's why we choose to do our updates for our software devices on Thursdays. Now, pretty much everything else, whether it's a camera, a controller, or a network switch, or your monitors, those typically aren't as dependent on getting an update. Sure, you can get some cool new features, but it's not necessary for your day-to-day productions if you don't need those features. So typically what we'll do is once a quarter, we'll do an update on the rest of our equipment. And as you can see, we in purple on our calendar here, we have it listed as the second to last Thursday of every month. We don't want to be updating the TriCaster and our cameras and our network switch all at the same time. That's just, a cause for concern. So we like to keep them separated a little bit. Now I'll give you two little kind of, I guess you could say, horror stories so you can learn from our mistakes like we have. There have been in the past year or two that we've been working here, I've been working here, where our TriCaster would not connect to Facebook, and we had no idea why. The TriCaster is working. We have all of our RTMP, stream key, stream URL, all of that was set in place. Everything was working right. All of our cameras are connected. YouTube was getting a stream, but Facebook would not take our RTMP stream. Well, we found out our TriCaster was out of date. Facebook had done an update, and our Facebook had done our TriCaster had an update in response to Facebook's update to make it so they would still be able to communicate with each other. And well, unfortunately, we didn't update our TriCaster, so our TriCaster was unable to stream that Tuesday to Facebook, and we actually had to, fortunately, record our stream, and then we uploaded it the day after from YouTube. Now, you can easily prevent that by just making sure that you update your systems extremely periodically. Now, the same thing can be said with another one of our devices. You know, we promote the Netgear M4250 switches as being the, you know, I guess you could say, number one tech tip for an NDI solution. We love the Netgear M4250 switches. We have actually 2 of the Netgear M4250 switches in our studio, and we noticed recently that a couple of our cameras were not connecting to the switch properly, and we said, well, our cameras are up to date. We never thought, oh my goodness, we should update the network switch. And it actually had been quite some time. It had been probably 6 or 8 months since we had updated it, and now we know, all right, we got to update our switches just as frequently as our cameras. And you know, you just want to make sure that you're on top of your updates. And you know, let's be honest. A lot of the times when you reach out to technical support, the very first thing they're going to say is, "Are you on the latest firmware?" So it's just a good rule of thumb to make sure that everything in your studio is up to date. Now, some tech tips for best practices when doing updates. I kind of talked about some of these already. One big one, don't update your devices on the day that you need to use them. Some updates can take 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but some of them, especially if you hadn't done one in a couple months and it's a bigger system like a TriCaster, can take upwards of a half an hour. And if anything goes wrong, again, you have no time to pivot to plan B. So it's just a good rule of thumb. Do not update on the same day that you need to go live. We already talked about this as well. Try not to update your devices on a Friday, because if you do need to get a hold of the manufacturer for whatever reason, they're not going to be available over the weekend for the most part. You know, we work with some great manufacturers like PTZ Optics and Netgear who have amazing customer support that you can get on the phone with them, but only when they're open, which is typically Monday through Friday. And we also talked about this a little bit too. Make sure that you're not updating multiple devices all at the same time. You may have 3 cameras in your studio and you may have 1 or 2 backups, but if for whatever reason you update all 3 of your cameras and for whatever reason something is going wrong or it's taking longer than expected, well, now you only have 1 backup camera or 2 backup cameras. You don't want to do that to yourselves. If you have multiple cameras, and just make sure that you're not updating them at the same exact time. The next thing that we wanted to talk about while we're talking about updating and potentially upgrading is 4K. People ask us all the time, is it time to step up to 4K? And then what else should I be keeping an eye on in the world of 4K? Now, we're going to keep it on this slide for a minute here, but I have a lot to say about this. Now, the answer to should you upgrade to 4K is maybe. Some people do not need to upgrade to 4K. It is, I would say, in my honest opinion, it is not quite the standard yet for streaming. As a matter of fact, I believe YouTube is the only platform that allows you to stream at 4K, maybe Twitch, but I know that Facebook still recommends that you stream at 1080. And last I checked, LinkedIn actually recommends that you stream at 720 because they care more about having a stable and consistent frame rate than the quality of the picture. You can still have a 720 picture that looks pretty good, or 1080, pretty good picture with great content. But if you start having stuttering frames or anything like that, well, people are going to leave much faster than if they're just looking at a consistent 720. So you may not need to upgrade to 4K, but there are some benefits to upgrading to 4K. One thing that I also want to say before I get to the benefits of using 4K is the beauty of live streaming with 4K is you can do it incrementally. You can get your cameras to be 4K now, and then maybe when your budget increases next quarter, you can get a production system that is 4K. And in that scenario, you may be thinking, oh, I have a 4K camera. I can't connect that to my 1080 TriCaster Mini Go because it only outputs at 1080. It can only record at 1080. Well, that's not a problem because most cameras nowadays will give you the option to output at a lower resolution. When you're looking at the specifications of 4K cameras, a lot of the times it will say up to 4K, which means you could record or output at 1080, 720, 480. A lot of cameras will give you different resolutions and frame rates that you can record and output up to, but that doesn't mean that you have to use the highest one. So you can get your cameras now and have them be 4K, so then when you do upgrade your production system, then you have the option of streaming at 4K because you already have your 4K cameras. And the same thing can happen in reverse. Just because a production system can output in 4K doesn't mean that you have to ingest 4K signals into it. As a matter of fact, we're using 4K cameras in our studio here, but we only output at 1080 because we want to make sure that we have a consistent and stable frame rate. But we get to, quote unquote, super sample our 4K cameras and then downscale them to 1080. So that's kind of my little spiel on, is it time to upgrade it? It really is a matter of personal preference and the limitations of your studio and what pieces you want to upgrade in what order. You don't have to do it all at the same time is basically what I'm trying to get across. So there are definitely benefits to using 4K, one of them being, of course, you have more pixels to see your subject, and of course that picture is going to typically look better, it's going to look crisper. But also because you have more pixels on the screen, you're going to have better low light capability because you have more pixels able to pick up information. And then, a lot of these denoisers and low light sensors are able to extrapolate more information because there are more pixels to extrapolate from. And my favorite thing about using 4K, and this is going back with, I'm going to have 4K cameras, but I'm going to output at 1080, is you can get a lossless digital zoom when you're exporting at a lower resolution. Now, a perfect example of that is a lot of our EPTZs, which is an electronic pan tilt zoom, will have a 4K sensor on it, but then it will only output at 1080 because you can digitally zoom into that picture. And the same thing is true with a production system. So if you have a 4K camera and a 4K production system, you can digitally zoom into your 4K image and output at 1080 or 720, and you're going to have a lossless digital zoom, which means you can extend the zoom range on your camera. Say it's a 12x camera, and well, now you can extend that range a little bit to maybe the equivalent of a 14x or a 15x because you are just zooming into a 4K image and outputting at 1080. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about upgrading, if it's the right time to upgrade your physical hardware. And again, a lot of the times it's going to be a matter of preference, what your studio is doing and what you want to update or what piece you want to update when. So we're going to talk about the LiveU Solo and the LiveU Solo Pro. We're going to talk about pretty much the entire YoloBox family of products, the YoloBox, YoloBox Mini, YoloBox Pro, and YoloBox Ultra. And then we're going to talk about the TriCaster Minis, because the Mini HD4 is discontinued, and we've actually had quite a few people, maybe not quite a few people, but a couple people over the past month or two say, hey, Mini HD4 is discontinued. What do you recommend now? All right, so we're going to start off with the YoloBox family. If you know us, you know that we here at Videoguys love the YoloBoxes. These are one-man, one-stop shop, monitor, switcher, recorder, encoder, can do cellular data, all of that stuff. So the YoloBox OG came out, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and it was a big hit. And pretty much every year since then, YoloLive has put out a new YoloBox. And, you know, these newer YoloBoxes kind of had their own kind of niche place for them to fit in. But when they came out with the YoloBox Ultra, that's when we were really like, wow, okay, now this is really something that we should talk about, and talk about the benefits of the YoloBox Ultra, because it really is a game changer, especially when we're comparing it to the OG YoloBox. Now, the OG YoloBox is, I think, it has a 7-inch screen on it, it has 2 HDMI ports on it. It has the slowest CPU out of the bunch. It has one of the smallest batteries out of the bunch. And these are just the things that you can see right away. It can still do, you know, your switching. It can still stream to multiple destinations. It does have the 2 HDMI ports on it. You can do green screen, but it's really not getting any updates anymore. And that says something, because YoloLive, if you've had any of these products consistently get updates. And that's one thing that we like about YoloLive, is that they are listening to customer feedback. But at the end of the day, if your CPU can't handle the newest features, you ultimately will not be able to get new features on that eventually. So the YoloBox Pro was basically the next step. Let's get a faster CPU in there. We'll add one more HDMI port onto the unit. So now we have 3 HDMI ports, and we have a bigger screen, brighter screen, bigger battery. But for the most part, it's a lot of just the same updates. And again, it was capped off at a certain point. But then when we get to the YoloBox Ultra, that's when I'm like, wow, okay, this is kind of the next step. Now, a lot of the similarities are shared between the YoloBox OG, the YoloBox Mini, the YoloBox Pro, and the YoloBox Ultra. But then where the YoloBox Ultra kind of takes off is the additional inputs that they've added to the Ultra. And of course, one more HDMI port. So now we have 4 HDMI ports. But now we get stuff that the other devices can't do, such as ISO recording. This is a huge thing that you might want to consider. A lot of the times when you are recording something and you're streaming something, you may want to say, hey, I really like that 30-second clip of, you know, my guest talking, but I didn't have him up on the screen the whole time. Well, now if you do ISO recording, you can have the individual isolated recordings of your 4 HDMI inputs. And I believe that they are working on updates where you will be able to bring in USB inputs as well to record in your ISO with your ISO recordings. And I know that the end goal is also NDI. And well, what do you know? That's another big feature that the other YoloBox devices won't get, NDI. This is like a perfect entry-level device to get you into the world of NDI. Now, if you don't know what NDI is, basically it's NDI's network device interface. Allows you to have your cameras or controllers or other devices on your network and then be able to bring them into a production system. Typically, that is, you know, reserved for a somewhat more higher-end production system like a Pearl or from Epiphan or a TriCaster or the Wirecast gear. But now you can get this, you know, really, really solid priced device at only $14.99 and be able to kind of dip your toes into the water of NDI and bring in up to three video sources into your YoloBox all through NDI now. And then also be able to output your master program back into the NDI network. Now, the biggest thing to me when I saw that is, oh my goodness, when you're using HDMI is great. It's very consumer friendly, but the major downside to using HDMI is that you really shouldn't run an HDMI cable more than like 25 feet. They're a little bit kind of bulky and clunky. So when you have 4 cameras plugged into the HDMI ports and you got them going all different directions, it can be a little bit clunky, potentially a tripping hazard. Well, now if you go to NDI, you can run your cables upwards of 300 feet with an RJ45 cable, and it just makes things so much easier because now you can have one cable going into your YoloBox Ultra. You can have your network switch, and then you can do all of your cabling through the walls or through the ceiling for your cameras, and you never have a cable on the ground again. And NDI just makes things so much simpler and easier, and I'm ecstatic to see that in a YoloBox. And then, of course, the other big thing about upgrading to the YoloBox Ultra is that you get that 4K capability that we were talking about not too long ago. So there are a lot of reasons that you can upgrade to the YoloBox Ultra. But maybe you say, okay, James, I don't need 4K. I'm still only streaming at 1080, and I'm not going into NDI. I'm totally happy with my HDMI devices. Well, if you still have the OG YoloBox, maybe it's worth considering just going to the Pro. You don't have to jump all the way to the Ultra. There are other benefits that you can get with going to the Pro, and you can give us a call. We can talk about all of the differences between the YoloBoxes, and we will find the right one for you to upgrade to. Maybe you even just want 1 or 2 cameras. YoloBox Mini is perfect for that, and you still get a faster CPU and a brighter screen and a better battery. So just lots of things to consider. And in my opinion, the YoloBox Ultra is absolutely worth the $14.99 and is worth upgrading to, especially if you want to dip your toes into NDI. The next thing that we're going to talk about is the LiveU Solo and the LiveU Solo Pro, which totally didn't even think about this until just now, pairs very well with any of the YoloBoxes. I got off the phone with a customer actually right before coming on the show, and we were talking about pairing a YoloBox Pro with a LiveU Solo, and it's just funny that I didn't even think about that, and we're doing a show talking about it. All right, so if you don't know what the LiveU Solo is, it's an encoder that you're able to plug either an HDMI or SDI video source into, and then it will use cellular bonding to send your video to LiveU's cloud and then send it to your destination of choice via either RTMP or SRT. Primarily, it's done for RTMP to Facebook or YouTube, but you can also use SRT. Now, LiveU Solo Pro has been out for a little bit now, but the LiveU Solo has been out for quite some time. And so we get asked this all the time. What's the differences between them? Do I need to upgrade? And again, it really is going to come down to circumstances. If you have a LiveU Solo and you're considering upgrading to a Solo Pro, let me walk you through some of the more major differences between them. The first one being, if you look at the compression chart there, or I don't know what it's called, row, you will see that the LiveU Solo base model uses H.264 compression, whereas the LiveU Solo Pro can use HEVC or H.265 compression. And basically what that means is it can compress your video just a little bit more to use less bandwidth to send out your signal. So even if you're in the most extreme remote areas, you're going to pretty much guarantee that your video is going to be stable at whatever resolution you're choosing. And I totally didn't even mention the fact that the LiveU Solo does HD, which is 1080-60 streaming to your destination, whereas the Solo Pro can do 4K. Another big difference with the LiveU Solo Pro, it's not available yet, but it will be available, is that you can have up to 4 cellular modems connected to it at the same time, whereas the LiveU Solo only allows you to have 2 USB modems connected to it. So again, pairing that up to 4 modems with the H.265 compression, that's going to mean that basically no matter where you go, you are guaranteeing that your signal is going to go out. As you can see with the max bit rate, you go from 8 megabytes per second all the way up to 20 megabytes per second. Now, when it comes to the power connector, this is another one that I sometimes gloss over, but then I realize this is pretty big actually, specifically for what we've been getting a lot of calls for lately is people that are doing race cars, whether it's, derby racing or kart racing, all the way up to, I don't know what they're called, not NASCAR, but the one below that. They want to be able to stream their driver and what they see and out in the racetrack. And part of the big thing is, some of these races can go longer than the battery can hold in the LiveU Solo Pro or LiveU Solo, which is about 3 hours. With the LiveU Solo, you basically have to use their proprietary 12-volt cable, and you have to plug it into a 2-prong outlet. And not everybody has that, especially not necessarily in a race car. They're not going to have a 2-prong outlet readily available. Or if you are a reporter out in the field, you're not going to have a 2-prong outlet readily available. But with the LiveU Solo Pro, you have the USB-C charging port, which means any standard USB-C cable can charge the LiveU Solo Pro and basically make it run indefinitely, which means it's easier to find a 2-prong cable that would be able to charge it. But at the same time, you can also use any portable phone charger, power bank thing, the ones that are 10,000 milliamps or 20,000 milliamps. You can plug that right into the USB port on the LiveU Solo Pro, and now you are, you're charging your LiveU Solo indefinitely because you can use it while you're charging it, and you don't ever have to have an outlet anywhere near you because you can just keep bringing those portable banks. The other last major difference with the Solo versus the Solo Pro is the Solo can use the Solo Connect modems, and we'll actually just go to this slide and talk about them. The Solo Connect modems are only usable in the United States, whereas the LiveU Solo Pro has the ability to use the Solo Connect Pro modems. They're the same price, $450. The data plan in the United States is the same price for the data plan, which is $295 a month. I'm sorry, and the Solo Connect Pro. The main difference is that they can actually be used internationally. There is an international option for the Solo Connect Pro modem kits. So those are the major differences with the LiveU Solo devices, and you have to just make that decision. Do you want the 4K? Do you want the 4 modem kit when it eventually comes? Do you want that USB-C charging port? And again, we can get on the phone, 800-323-2325, and we can talk about these again for your specific situation. Next is the the Vizrt TriCaster Mini family. The reason that we're going to be talking about this is because somewhat recently the TriCaster Mini HD4 was discontinued, and so people are calling in and asking, what are my upgrade options if I want to stay with a TriCaster family and I want to stay with a TriCaster Mini? Well, there are currently 3 options available when it comes to the TriCaster Mini. You have the TriCaster Mini Go, which is NDI and USB only. You have the TriCaster Mini 4K, which has a 4-port NDI network switch built in with PoE. And then you have the TriCaster Mini X, which is similar to the Mini HD4 in the fact that it has 4 HDMI ports on the back of it. Now, I want to bring this screen up full screen, and this is a lot of information that we put on here, and I just want to leave it up here on full screen, and I would just reiterate the differences between the Mini Go, the Mini 4K, and the Mini X. The Mini Go, one of the things that you want to take note as is in the top, you can only have 4 inputs with it. whether it's IP or USB, and it is limited to 1080/60 streaming. We had talked about this earlier. For some people, that is totally fine. But when you look at the price of the Mini Go, it is the most affordable option when it comes to a TriCaster, and that's why. When you're looking at the TriCaster Mini 4K, things to take note are that you can have up to 8 sources connected to it. It can do up to 4K 60, and like I said, it has that network switch built into it, so you can have up to 4 NDI devices connected directly into it without having the need to get a network switch. The TriCaster Mini X has 4 HDMI ports on the back of it, but included with NDI, if you have a network switch, you can get an additional 4 inputs via IP. The TriCaster Mini X can stream up to 4K 30, and yeah, that's pretty much the things that I wanted to highlight on this screen. So our recommendation to go from the Mini HD4 to a new Mini would most likely be the TriCaster Mini X. And that's because, like I said, it has the 4 HDMI ports on the back of the unit, so you are able to have the most similarities, the easiest transition. But if you want to, like I said, dip your toes into NDI, you can't go wrong with the TriCaster Mini Go or the TriCaster Mini 4K, especially if you don't have, that's okay. The pictures are swapped. Oh, yes, you see on the left-hand side there, that's actually a TriCaster Mini 4K. I just want to clarify. You can tell that because the Mini 4K comes with the Spark Pluses. The Spark Pluses are basically HDMI to NDI converters. So if you did want to use a mix of HDMI sources and NDI sources with the Mini 4K, you don't need any additional hardware. But anyway, so as you can see in these pictures, there are bundles available with the Mini control surface and Pelican cases available for all of the TriCaster Minis. Again, if you have any questions about the differences and you really want to get on the phone and talk with us about which one is right for you to go from the Mini HD4, either HDMI or SDI model, we would be more than happy to help you pick the right one for you. The last thing that we want to talk about, and I apologize, this is a long show. The last thing that we want to talk about is upgrading your production software, and specifically we're going to talk about Avid Media Composer and Wirecast. We had talked about updating your software or firmware, but now we're talking about upgrading your software. So the first thing that I wanted to say is that Avid Media Composer did switch to a subscription, and the way that they used to do it was a perpetual license. You pay for the perpetual license. It was one lump sum fee, and when you were at the end of your year of updates and support, you would keep that version of Avid and Media Composer, and you would no longer get updates. But now they are going away from that, and they are choosing to offer a much more cost-effective subscription service where you pay for a subscription and you get all of the updates and upgrades, and it's significantly cheaper than it was to get a perpetual license and then get yearly updates for that. There are 2 versions of the subscription model. There's a new Media Composer subscription model, and then there's the Media Composer subscription renewals. The reason that we have these both on this slide is so you know that if you are brand new to Avid, you will need to choose the new Media Composer subscription, whereas if you already have a subscription and you want to renew it, you have to choose the Media Composer subscription renewal. They are different SKUs, and if you already have Media Composer subscription and you purchase a new Media Composer subscription, it's not going to work. So just wanted to put that on this slide. And then we also wanted to talk about some of the differences with Media Composer Ultimate. So not only do you need to worry about if you want to purchase Media Composer with the subscription model, but there are two different options. There's Media Composer and then there's Media Composer Ultimate. And with Media Composer Ultimate, you get the phrase find, you get script sync, you get the symphony option, just basically a whole bunch of AI tools that make your editing session that much easier. I'm not going to go into too much depth into this for two reasons. One, the show is already getting pretty long. And number two, Gary actually did, I think 2 weeks ago, he did a whole show on Avid. And I highly recommend that you just go check that out and you will get all the information. But it's just another thing to consider when you are looking to either update or upgrade. The last thing that I want to talk about is Wirecast. Wirecast is a software that allows you to do switching, and the Wirecast has gone away from a perpetual license as well and moved to a subscription model. Now, kind of similar to Avid, when you if you already have Wirecast 15, you are more than welcome to keep using it forever. You do not have to upgrade, but if you want access to the latest updates and access to Wirecast 16, you will need to get the subscription service. And on the right there, you can see all of the differences between Wirecast Studio and Wirecast Pro. And you can see the price of the annual subscription. $299 for Wirecast Studio and $399 for Wirecast Pro. If you have any questions about the differences between them, and if you have Wirecast already and you don't want to, you want to just know what comes in switching over to the subscription model, definitely give us a call and we'll be more than happy to talk about that. Like I said, this has been a really long show, and thank you for sticking around. This has been Ask the Video Guys. My name is James Fresca. I'm a video production specialist here at Videoguys. You can give us a call at 800-323-2325. My direct extension is 1111. Make sure to follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and we'll see you next week. Have a good one.
Videoguys is available Monday through Friday. Give us a call at 1-800-323-2325. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram to stay connected with all of our updates. And you can like us on Facebook. Keep an eye out for our live videos, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.